Hare Krishna, welcome everyone to another interview on the importance of reading Srila Prabhupada's books. On behalf of the ISKCON Ministry of Education, I'm conducting these interviews, and today we are very fortunate and happy to have with us His Grace Bada Haridas Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
We're trying.
So important.
Yeah, so of course, most devotees will know you. Bada Haridas Prabhu is quite a well-known person in our Hare Krishna movement. He's known for his amazing and very beautiful kirtans. As a young man, you were studying music, right? You were studying in America and also singing in Montreal, in Switzerland.
Yeah.
On the way to become a professional music star. But then somehow in 1975, I believe, you met Srila Prabhupada and your life changed. And we are looking forward to hear about that. And then you started to explore the devotional music, kirtan, and you lived as a brahmachari for some time at the, I think, Los Angeles temple. And then later on you got married to Kosha Rupa Madachi, and it has been 40 years you're married, right?
Yeah, 40.
Congratulations, that's amazing. And together with her, you were traveling, and then in India, I believe, also. And you also run a temple for some time.
Yeah, 10 years as a temple president.
10 years as a temple president. Wow. And later, you also have two children, a son and a daughter, and they're both also quite artistic. So thank you so much for being such a wonderful example of a devotee and successful grihasta, and engaging your talents in Krishna service, especially with music. So I'm very excited to talk about books, the book, reading Srila Prabhupada's books, and also trying to see the connection between kirtan and reading. Mm. But let's first hear a bit from you about what was your first encounter with Srila Prabhupada's books. Where did you got the first book, and which book was it? And
Actually, my first book, when I was going back, after I got out of university, I was doing graduate studies in Switzerland. And so I would go back and forth from my home in Los Angeles area. And one of the times through the airport, I got a Bhagavad Gita from one of the book distributors.
In Switzerland?
No, this was in Los Angeles. Airport. And LAX. Wonderful devotee, her name is Dikshavati. And she had a great line, actually. Anyway, so I bought the book, and I was excited because a friend of mine had told me about the Bhagavad Gita. He said it was the Hare Krishna Bible. And so I was really excited to get it, and I opened it, and I read the first page, and I said, I can't understand this. And I shut the book, and I actually didn't open Bhagavad Gita again until I moved into a temple, which was maybe a year or two later, which points out the necessity of devotee association to be able to understand the books. And that was my experience. Later on, when I came back after I finished in Europe, I came back to my home in Torrance. And I think due to various little bits of Agata Sukriti or whatever, I had a burning desire in my heart at that time to find a genuine spiritual path. That was my thought. And so amazingly enough, my father came home from the airport and put a mantra card on my desk. And it said, chant Hare Krishna and your life will be sublime. And then it said classes in Bhakti Yoga. So I thought, what's Bhakti Yoga? I'd heard of yoga, but I didn't know what Bhakti Yoga was. So I called up the temple And I talked to a devotee, so I said, so what's bhakti yoga? And he said, bhakti yoga means to serve God. We're by nature servants of God. Either we'll serve God or we'll serve a cat or a dog. And at the time, I was at my sister's house taking care of her cats. So I thought, oh, this makes a lot of sense. So anyway, long story short, I went down to the temple. Actually, it was a pretty short story. I went down to the temple that evening, spent the night, and decided to move in. I decided this was the path that I was looking for. This was the spiritual path. And I guess I was thinking like that because of various experiences that, I wanted something that you could, that was real. You had some tools. You could progress in your life. You could solve your problems. You could do something. So, although I didn't know very much, I was convinced that this was it. I have to say, I wasn't much of a reader before coming to Krishna consciousness, and I guess I'm still a really slow reader. I'm not a scholar by any means. But I really fell in love with Prabhupada's books. I'd say more than, the association of devotees certainly, but I think what really changed my life, and probably the most important single item really, is Prabhupada's books. So that's why I was happy to be part of your process, because I really do feel that they can transform your life. So I was so excited, and I discovered Sanskrit. And I was fortunate because this was the Los Angeles temple, so the press was there. And they had a devotee come and speak to us, and he showed us how to pronounce the verses. So I was a brand new devotee, and I learned, I'm not great at Sanskrit, but anyway, kind of I could pronounce the verses, understand what are the short syllables, what are the long syllables. And I began learning verses from then. And during my brahmacharya years, I think I learned 500 to 600 verses or something like that. It became an obsession to learn verses. I learned a new verse every few days, something like that. So that was an important part of my study. And I loved the Sanskrit was phonetic. It wasn't like English where you don't know what a word sounds like really. Although they talk about phonetics, it's not systematic.
It's quite impressive. You just mentioned you're not really much a scholar, but you learned a few hundred shlokas. And also the way you joined, for me personally, it's quite impressive to see how it seems in the early days, many of the Prabhupada's disciples, they just felt so convinced and joined the ashram in a couple of days. We don't experience that so much anymore nowadays. What made you join?
That's a good question. I've been asked that. You always have this story of like how I joined Krishna consciousness, and you say, well, I did this, and then I thought that, but honestly, my only answer is that Krishna just said, here, do this, because it doesn't make any sense. For one thing, I was a musician, and musicians are incredibly attached to being musicians. It's a strong attachment. And I don't know, that just, I would take it as it's a gata sukriti. I'd gotten, aside from Bhagavad Gita, I had gotten some magazine. I did get a couple magazines and Back to Godhead magazines, and of course I'd studied all the books, Autobiography of a Yogi, and all the required reading for the hippies. I did that. But it was just, at a point in my life where it looked very sudden, but for me it was, this is what I'm looking for.
like a natural next step that you took.
Yeah, this is what I even had an idea of being part of a spiritual community and like that. So it was just, I just take it that, some past pious, fortunate activities brought me to that point of, this is what I have to do right now. And did I understand totally what I was getting myself in for? Probably not. Probably not.
You probably also mentioned how at the first place, maybe you didn't have such an access to the books, but then through the association with the devotees, that kind of helped you. Do you like to share a bit more about that? Was it the culture of reading together at that time, or what was the reading culture in these early days in Los Angeles?
Well, definitely. I mean, as soon as when I joined they had a little Bhakti program. I have to say the reading culture was horrible, but it was one of my pet peeves. But I did have some very nice experience in the new Bhakti program. We were having classes. That was actually very nice. We were having classes and we were reading, and it was like, wow, it was just amazing, these books and just this knowledge. And it all began to make sense. I couldn't even open the book before, but in the association of devotees, just, it became, of course it takes years to assimilate the knowledge, but still it all just began to make sense. And you could just see it. So many things that, you see in the world and you wonder, why is it like that? And you read Prabhupada's books and you go, oh, that's why it's like that. It's knowledge that illuminates. It's practical, realized knowledge. So I was very excited. And I guess from the Bhakti program, I had that desire to read. So even later on when, it's kind of like more the emphasis was go out, don't, and we weren't given time to read specifically. I just had to get up early enough in the morning so that I could read before I went out on Sankirtan. And I always felt like there should be more of an emphasis in education than there was, because at that time there was tremendous emphasis on, distributing books was nice, but later on it became collecting and doing all kinds of other stuff that happened during that era. And I saw devotees come and not have sufficient chance to read Prabhupada's books, or they didn't have the same emphasis, so they didn't take it upon themselves to do it, and gradually they became weak and left. And I think we saw so many people leave because they didn't have that attachment for Prabhupada's books and for daily arming themselves against the onslaughts of Maya with reading. One of your topics that comes up is daily reading of Prabhupada's books, and we need to read daily because daily Maya is preaching. Maya doesn't take a day off. She doesn't even take a second off, and she's right there. Oh yeah, well, what about this? What about that? So we need to constantly arm ourselves by hearing. And and I felt like I got that sense that I need to take shelter of these books in order to just stick around, Anyway, Hare Krishna.
That's a very profound point, that the daily Nityam Bhagavatam Sevaya, the daily reading and hearing, is so important. Prabhu, you mentioned that you also served as a temple president.
My reading went down then.
That would be my question. It must be quite challenging to be a manager, a leader, at the same time find this time to read. Any realization? Still, it would be important to do it, right? As as a leader?
More important. One thing I noticed as a manager, you can kind of feel a little isolated. You can kind of feel like it's me against the rest of the devotees. I don't know if that's true, but the mind, kind of can create that, especially if you're, I don't know, not experienced managers. I certainly wasn't. And so it's very important to hear, to go on hearing, to, what can I say, bring about some reality in the mind. And I remember there's one senior, Mahavishnu Maharaj, he's passed away now. And he commented on temple presidency and all that service that we're doing. He said, well, that's nice, it's a pious activity. He kind of dismissed it. He said, but you have to hear. You have to hear.
Like to hear spiritual sound vibration, to make the activity actually spiritual, to focus on Krishna.
Exactly. Otherwise, it can become mundane. Yeah. And of course, Prabhupada says that many times, that it's the hearing that brings about the consciousness that we're offering this to Krishna. Otherwise, some other kind of mindset is there. It's about personal whatever.
Now, you being a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and how do you feel that Prabhupada is present in his books? I mean, we have heard that many times, how devotees describe that we open a book and actually we get a way to associate with Prabhupada. How do you experience that in your...
Well, I think devotees say that because they do experience it. It's very tangible, and I think that's the significance of Prabhupada's books over other books, is that he's there. Certainly the information is found many places, but but just having Prabhupada's personal association, I don't know how even describe it, just Prabhupada's there. And it seems like it's so personal. I had very little association with Prabhupada, but, one experience, aside from his books, is I have a regular daily practice of listening to his lectures. And I do that while I'm, getting ready in the morning. So it's, 10, 15 minutes of listening to Srila Prabhupada. And it seems, I don't know, it's like the books are alive. They just somehow or other tell you what you need to hear right then. That's my experience. I've talked to many devotees that have that experience, that if there's something I need to hear or want to know, there's something that will come. I don't know if I can... Yeah, he's there. I don't know what more I can say. He's there, he's waiting to talk to us. And as Krishna makes the arrangement.
So it's a question whether we are able to hear.
Yeah. I guess, I think that's the main thing, is that we have to be ready to hear. And in the morning, somehow or other, when I wake up, I'm always in anxiety. Just coming out of a sleep, and the world looks horrible, and I don't know. That's just my own mindset. But it's in that vulnerable, kind of disoriented state, to put Prabhupada in, to hear Prabhupada in at that time, it's invaluable. And I just hear every word. That's the thing. I think the biggest problem really is being able to hear, just when we're reading, or, when we're hearing, it's just to really, really be open, Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna, just open, just let it come in.
I believe the same is true for kirtan. One really wants to absorb in the holy name. We need to really learn to absorb here. Of course, as we mentioned in the beginning, you're well-known kirtani, and devotees very much appreciate your beautiful bhajans. Where do you see the connection between this service of leading devotees in kirtan and your reading practice? Do you see a connection, or what is?
Yeah, I think, whatever little service I'm able to do in terms of kirtan, I think reading the books is inseparable. It couldn't, I read something nice that Jamuna Devi wrote, where she said that Srila Prabhupada told her that the secret to an arta-free kirtan is reading, just studying Srila Prabhupada's books, studying his books.
For an arta-free kirtan.
Yeah, the secret is studying the books.
Wow.
That's the secret. Because and Bhakti, the acharyas speak about this also, that because it's, in one sense, chanting is a self-sufficient activity, but in another sense, it completely depends on our mindset, on our orientation. So we need this sambandha, gyan, that I'm a servant of Krishna, and Krishna is present here in His holy name, and I'm serving Him. I've heard, I don't know if I've actually read this, but they say that Prabhupada wrote all of his books just so that we would chant. And sometimes I've been seeing that people will say, well, I'm chanting, so I don't need to read the books. Not true. Not at all true. If we at all want to chant purely, if we at all want to reap the benefits of chanting, then I firmly believe we need to be grounded in, especially Srila Prabhupada's books, the mentality, how to chant, how to think. Prabhupada's just always correcting. It's like we're, at least for myself, continuously, the mind goes off here and there, and Prabhupada's always, nope, not that way, nope, come back over here. Just always, correcting and bringing back to the lotus feet of Krishna. And the mood, the Prabhupada's mood of devotion, his intense humility and determination to serve, and just his surrender, that, how can we chant without drinking that deeply in our hearts? How can, what will we chant with? It'll, so, it's inseparable.
I think you're also giving a lot of seminars on Vaishnava songs, where, like, songs of Narottam Das Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Is it also similar to that you try to absorb the mood of these great Vaishnavas to understand how to sing the proper mood?
Yeah, exactly there. Actually, one time Prabhupada was said, I can't remember the exact quote, but anyway, the idea was that he was asked, is there any difference between chanting Hare Krishna and singing these songs? And his response was, if you know what you're chanting, then there's no difference.
Okay.
Something like that. Because, the songs, they're all praying intensely to Krishna, and there's such humility. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a prayer, constantly prayers for purify my heart, please, bring me to your lotus feet. All of these kinds of sentiments, that's what chanting is. That's what chanting is.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
So in other words, if we study Srila Prabhupada's books, then we also understand Srila Prabhupada's mood in that sense, how he was in a prayerful mood, right?
Yeah, yeah. And hopefully that'll touch our hearts. And, yeah, if we can, speaking personally, if I can pray to Krishna with some of the same intensity and purity and mood as Prabhupada, then that's the perfection.
You mentioned before that someone may argue that, well, chanting is the perfection. I'm already chanting, so no need for reading. And sometimes we see that there's quite a whole new generation of young devotees who are very much into kirtan. Sometimes maybe not so much into sadhana. What would you tell devotees who maybe not have such a strong sadhana, and including not reading Prabhupada's books? Especially for young people, they might feel reading is boring, or I'd rather watch a YouTube video. How to encourage devotees who haven't yet found that taste in reading?
That's a good question. I'm trying to answer that question and encourage them. Well, I guess the first thing is we need our own, like Prabhupada told Brahmatirtha, he asked him, how can I convince others? And Prabhupada says, first of all, you be convinced. So if we have our own taste and attachment for reading, I think that's the best thing we can do is exude that, because young people, after all, want to do what's fun and exciting. If it looks fun and exciting for you, they might want to do it. Definitely, if you tell them that they should,
doesn't work.
Probably won't work. Yeah. I was asked to give a class to a bunch of young people once, and it was just on that topic of developing an attachment for reading Prabhupada's books. So I thought that was a good sign. At least they're thinking I should be attached. One thing is nice that's encouraging, though, is if they do have as Satchidananda Swami put it, the chanting is a self-correcting process. So somehow or other, if someone chants, even if it's Bhagavatam says, Shobham, what is it, Helanamevava, even if they chant for musical entertainment or neglectfully or like that, Asheshagaharam Vitu, they become relieved of all the reactions to so many sins. So if they're not yet attached to the sadhana reading the books, at least if they do have that attachment for chanting, then that's a good sign. Encourage that. And I've seen many examples of that, of young people that were into kirtan and not much into anything else. And over the years, I've seen them become really wonderful devotees, practicing and studying and doing so many things. So, and Prabhupada himself said that people should not be, he said we shouldn't present Krishna consciousness as a society of rules and regulations, but simply they should be encouraged to join the kirtan. So I think it's probably true for our young people, if they can be encouraged to do kirtan, then that will be the gateway for the other things. But certainly if we want to get the most out of kirtan, if we want to really go deeply into kirtan and get the fruit that our spiritual master wants us to get from the kirtan, then we also have to seriously, take the message into our hearts as well. Another question that I've found is always important is
how to apply what we read. Prabhupada gave us so much knowledge, there's so much wisdom in Prabhupada's books. But then when it comes to apply it in our daily life, would you have any advice how we can make sure to apply this also?
I saw that on your list of questions, and I was thinking, I don't know how to answer that. So my own approach to reading is to really try to be open to hear what Krishna wants to tell me. That's, in other words, I don't really know what I need to hear. I don't really, if I knew it, then I'd know it, but I don't. So I try to approach Prabhupada's books in that way, that Prabhupada wants to tell me something, Krishna wants to tell me something, and let me just open my heart to that. Let me be present. Let me not be in a hurry. I personally read really slowly, and I try to have a certain amount of time each day that I read. And I read, right now I'm reading Bhagavatam again, and I read Gita regularly because I do classes and some reading groups and things like that. But I try to not be in a hurry to read, to just chew on every word as much as possible, and stop and think about it. What does this mean? How? Yeah, in that sense, how to apply it. I think that's perhaps a good answer. Is that if we really if we want to know how to apply it, we have to think about it first. Really, what is being said? What are the implications of what are the other implications of what's being said? And just take that deeply. And I remember Srila Prabhupada said once that by hearing, if we hear sufficiently, then we'll know how to utilize all of our life for Krishna. So really, that's the ultimate. The application is, how do I give my life to Krishna? In essence, that's the application. And if we, I feel like if we hear deeply, if it goes into our heart, then it changes how we see the world. And as far as any kind of specific do this or do that, I can't say, but it seems like this is the essence of hearing, is that it changes how we see the world, how we deal with the world. The biggest application is, this world isn't meant for me to enjoy. I'm a servant. I'm a servant of Krishna. That's the ultimate practical application, and that comes gradually. That realization comes gradually. Sometimes by trying to enjoy again and being unsuccessful.
Thank you so much, Bada Haridas Prabhu, for sharing all your realizations with us. Is there any kind of final words, some final wisdom you'd like to share with us on the topic of reading and absorbing Srila Prabhupada's books?
Well, be patient. I think Vaishnava mentions this point often, that we have to go on hearing for a long time. There's a place where Srila Prabhupada says that one of the first purports it, hearing over a long period of time. It's a way of life. And it's not something that we will notice great results. We will feel stronger. And I guess I would just say that the Prabhupada's books are a shelter. they're a shelter. And often when we're distressed, we might think of various ways to solve our distress. But I found that if somehow or other that moment, at those times, if we can take shelter of Krishna, if we can hear from Prabhupada's books, then that's our shelter. That's our ultimate shelter. And that we have to do. Yeah, we have to do that. It should become it should be part of our life. It's just what we do. Hare Krishna.
That's beautiful. Taking shelter in Krishna, taking shelter in Srila Prabhupada through his books, finding shelter there in Prabhupada's words, in Prabhupada's instructions.
I was thinking, like, in Bhagavad Gita, for instance, Arjuna had some pressing questions. And practically speaking, Krishna didn't answer them. What about the family? What about the relatives? What about this? And in one sense, I mean, it is, but in one sense, he didn't answer those questions, but he just elevated Arjuna in such a way that it wasn't a problem anymore. I guess we need that faith that that's what I really need. And it's attainable through Prabhupada's association in his books. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Prabhupada.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Wonderful. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Srila Prabhupada's books ki. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.